We had a Radio Shack computer, and we ended up numbering everything, punch it up on the computer, telling me what was on it.
Known as the happiest guitar hero in rock history, Eddie Van Halen lit up the world for decades with his blazing riffs, goofy charm, and big-hearted smile. But behind that grin, he was hiding something darker. At 62, Eddie finally confessed. He'd been holding back a list, a blacklist of 6 legendary guitarists the world thought he loved, but deep down, he couldn't stand. These weren't just random names. These were the same men who'd inspired him, jammed with him, even shaped his sound. Yet they betrayed him, dismissed him, or cut him deeper than anyone could have imagined. And once you hear who made that list, you'll understand why the rock world lost its mind when the truth came out. Now, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. Let's not waste another second. Let's get into the story. Eric Clapton, the hero who shattered Eddie's heart. The first name on Eddie Van Halen's secret hate list is the one nobody ever saw coming. Eric Clapton. Yes, that Clapton. The guitar god Eddie once worshipped so much he literally wore out his Cream records from replaying them all night long. People who knew Eddie back then said you couldn't step into his room without hearing Crossroads blasting until the speakers almost blew out. Eddie didn't just admire Clapton, he tried to be him. Every lick, every solo, every tone, Clapton was his blueprint. But everything fell apart in 1980 when Clapton sat down for an interview. A reporter asked what he thought of Eddie's playing. He could have said something polite, even supportive. Instead, he dropped a line that hit Eddie like a brick to the chest. He's very good technically, but I don't hear much soul. When Eddie read that, people close to him said his face just fell. No anger, no yelling, just a quiet heartbreak. He told friends, "I learned everything from him, and he says that?" That hurt ran deep. But the real heartbreak came later, backstage in Los Angeles. Eddie finally got to meet his hero in person, nervous, excited, like a kid seeing Santa for the first time. But Clapton barely looked up, no smile, no warmth, just cold glances at his watch like he wanted it to be over. When Eddie left, he muttered, "I think he just wanted it to end." That moment crushed him. The hero he'd looked up to his whole life suddenly felt small, distant, even cruel. Years later, Eddie finally admitted the truth in private. "I loved the myth more than the man." And that's why Clapton sits right at the top of Eddie's secret blacklist. Not because of some wild feud, but because that disappointment left the deepest scar on his heart. Ritchie Blackmore, the cold stare. Eddie never forgave Ritchie Blackmore, and here's the wild part. Blackmore didn't even have to say a single word. The first time they crossed paths, the air in the room dropped like ice. Eddie walked in full of excitement, ready to finally meet another guitar legend. But the second he laid eyes on Ritchie Blackmore, that excitement froze. Blackmore just stood there, staring at him with this blank, icy glare that screamed, "You're not welcome here!" Eddie talked about that moment years later, still sounding stunned. "He just stared at me. Didn't say hi. Nothing," he said. That cold silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. Eddie was the kind of guy who lit up every room, always open, friendly, ready with a smile. But Blackmore, he gave him nothing. No nod, no handshake, no respect. It was like a professional slap across the face, right in front of everyone. And it didn't end there. At a late 70s festival, one of the techs, just trying to be friendly, mentioned that Blackmore and Eddie should talk guitar tone sometime. But Blackmore didn't even pretend to care. He turned away, voice low but sharp as a knife, and said, "Not now. I don't have time for that kid." Eddie heard it. Everyone around heard it. The humiliation hung in the air like heavy humidity. You could almost feel it sticking to him. And then, just when things couldn't get worse, Blackmore threw another jab in the press. When a magazine asked his opinion on Eddie's mind-blowing new style, he shrugged it off with, "He's a fine player, but too many notes." That wasn't a critique. It was a straight-up dismissal. The kind that tells someone to know their place. From that day on, whenever Blackmore's name came up, Eddie's tone shifted. The teenage admiration he once had? Gone. What replaced it was something colder, a quiet, bitter truth. Years later, Eddie summed it up perfectly. "Some people give you the shaft with their eyes." Then he added, "Blackmore didn't just give it, he perfected it." Joe Perry, the rock star who acted like Eddie didn't exist. So what went down between Eddie Van Halen and Joe Perry? Before they even said a word to each other, there was tension in the air. Eddie stepped into the 1978 tour thrilled to be sharing the stage with Aerosmith, one of the bands that inspired him as a kid. But backstage, reality hit hard. Every time Eddie passed Joe Perry in the hallway, Perry just walked right by. No eye contact, no hello, nothing. It was like Eddie wasn't even there. Eddie didn't hide how that felt. He said straight up, "Joe Perry would just give me the shaft with his eyes." That silent coldness said it all, and it burned more than words ever could. Not a hello, not even a nod, nothing. Eddie didn't need a standing ovation or praise, just a simple sign of respect. But Joe Perry? He chose silence like it was a weapon. The coldest moment came one night after sound check. Eddie, curious about the Gibson Perry was holding, walked over with that signature friendly grin. Before he could even get a word out, Perry lifted his hand, without turning his head, and motioned, "Don't talk." Then he just kept chatting with someone else like Eddie wasn't even there. Eddie stood frozen for a second, humiliated. Later, he told a friend, "It was like I didn't even exist." That one brush off burned into his memory. Years later, Perry finally came around, calling Eddie a genius. But by then, it didn't matter. The apology came too late. The damage was already carved deep. That silence, that complete disregard, it never left him. With Joe Perry, the quiet was louder than any insult ever could be. Randy Rhoads, the rival who hit Eddie where it hurt the most. The clash between Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads didn't simmer. It exploded the second Randy's name started popping up beside Eddie's in magazine headlines. Eddie had just flipped the world of rock guitar upside down with his new sound, and suddenly, here came this young, classically trained prodigy being crowned as the next Eddie Van Halen. That label stung bad. Eddie didn't even try to hide how much it bothered him. In one recorded interview, his voice was sharp when he said, "He learned everything from me." To Eddie, it felt like the industry was handing his throne to a newcomer who hadn't earned it yet. And even though Randy wasn't trying to copy him, the press wouldn't stop comparing them. Every article, every fan debate turned it into an invisible duel. Their styles couldn't have been more different. Eddie was wild energy, raw instinct, chaos, and emotion. Randy was structured, trained, technical, and precise. But the media kept throwing them into the same ring, like it was some kind of guitar battle for the crown. Then came the moment that turned tension into real animosity. On tour with Ozzy Osbourne, one of Randy's techs thought it'd be funny to tape a tiny picture of Eddie under Randy's wah pedal. So every time Randy stepped down, he was literally stomping on Eddie's face. Randy found it hilarious and left it there. The joke spread fast across the crew, and when word got back to Eddie, something inside him snapped. Publicly, he laughed it off, pretending it didn't bother him. But privately, it ate him alive. That stunt wasn't just a joke, it was a line crossed. To him, it wasn't playful rivalry anymore. It was disrespect. Ozzy later didn't help matters when he said Randy didn't have a nice thing to say about Eddie. That rumor only deepened the divide between the two guitar legends. Eddie, the man who once inspired a generation, suddenly felt cornered, undervalued, underestimated, and overshadowed by someone he thought should have been thanking him instead. Randy Rhoads felt crushed by the constant comparisons. Both he and Eddie were tired of being pitted against each other, yet neither one wanted to admit just how insanely talented the other truly was. Deep down, they knew it, but pride kept them silent. And even after Randy was gone, his shadow never left Eddie. Randy became the one rival Eddie could never outrun, even in death. Tom Schultz, the engineer who crossed Eddie's line. The bad blood between Eddie Van Halen and Tom Schultz from Boston didn't start in private. It erupted on stage in front of thousands. Eddie had just finished ripping through one of his killer solos, the kind that sent the crowd into pure chaos. Moments later, Tom Schultz took the stage for Boston's set and launched into a solo that sounded almost identical. Same phrasing, same fire, same everything. Eddie froze in disbelief, staring from the side of the stage like, did he really just do that? After the show, Eddie went straight up to him, no hesitation. He asked point blank, "Why'd you play my solo out there? Why would you take something that personal?" But Schultz didn't even blink. He just shrugged and said, "It sounded good, like it was no big deal." Then he turned away and walked off as if the entire thing meant nothing. That right there lit a fire in Eddie. It wasn't just the copying, it was the arrogance behind it. The way Schultz brushed him off like Eddie's music, his craft, his soul, was just some riff to borrow. He didn't acknowledge the tension. He didn't even treat Eddie like a peer. He acted like it was beneath him. And then, just when things could have cooled down, another moment locked that grudge in for good. At a later show they both played, Eddie tried to let it go. He gave Schultz a polite nod backstage, a peace offering of sorts. But Schultz didn't nod back. He didn't even slow down. Crew members swore he purposely shifted his eyes away, refusing to even make contact. That was it. Eddie could forgive rivalry. He respected competition. But disrespect? That was unforgivable. Tom Schultz didn't just borrow a solo. He ignored the man who created it, and that's why he stayed on Eddie's secret blacklist. Not because of the music, but because he couldn't even look him in the eye while doing it. Rick Derringer, the veteran who pushed Eddie past his limit. Rick Derringer holds a unique and not-so-proud title. He's the only guitarist Eddie Van Halen ever kicked off a tour, and that fact alone says a lot about how fast things went south. There was no slow build-up, no quiet resentment. This one blew up instantly. What makes it even more shocking is that Eddie actually liked Rick Derringer at first. He respected him, admired his legacy, and thought they'd get along. But it didn't take long before that respect turned into tension, and tension into open hostility. The line was crossed so hard and so fast that Eddie didn't even hesitate. He had Derringer removed from the tour on the spot. Eddie had grown up playing some of Rick Derringer's old licks, even admiring the slick confidence Rick carried on stage. But that respect didn't last long once they hit the road together. The breaking point came during a live show in '78. Eddie had just ripped through one of his jaw-dropping solos, the kind that made the whole crowd lean in, eyes locked on him. Minutes later, Derringer walked out and played a section that wasn't just inspired by Eddie's solo. It was Eddie's solo, note for note, right in front of the same audience. Eddie was standing off stage, watching, and the look on his face said it all. He wasn't flattered. He was furious. It didn't feel like tribute. It felt like theft. After the show, he pulled Derringer aside and kept it real. He told him, "I don't care if people use tapping, but copying my melody, that's different." He even reminded Rick that he'd looked up to him when he was younger, hoping to appeal to some kind of mutual respect. But Derringer brushed it off like it was nothing. He mumbled something vague about just giving the crowd what they liked and walked away without another word. That attitude hit Eddie hard, but the next night, Derringer took it even further. He went on stage and did the exact same thing. Same melody, same phrasing, same finish. He even closed with "You Really Got Me," the Van Halen song that had already become their signature anthem. That was the final straw. Eddie didn't yell, he didn't argue, he just made the call. He told the band and crew straight up, "Derringer's not opening for us anymore." No debate, no warnings, no second chances. Rick Derringer had crossed the line not once, but twice, and Eddie shut that door forever. So now that the 6 names from Eddie Van Halen's secret blacklist are finally out in the open, Eric Clapton, Ritchie Blackmore, Joe Perry, Randy Rhoads, Tom Schultz, and Rick Derringer, which one shocked you the most? These weren't random names, they were legends. People Eddie once looked up to before their words and actions cut too deep. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We're reading every single one. And if you want more behind-the-scenes rock stories just like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. The next revelation might just blow your mind even more.